Today, I'm going to be teaching you how to beat the top Yu-Gi-Oh decks. Why? Because I'm a nice guy. And of course, not only do I want your subscription, I want your undying loyalty. Trying to build army here. But I'm so nice with it, I also ain't forget to say, I hope you're having an amazing day. But if you aren't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. Big dog, I've been talking to some of the best players in Yu-Gi-Oh! And this important information is going to be the difference between you losing against some of the best decks in the game or being able to dominate them. So without further ado, I present to you the ultimate meta counter guide. Bang! Dog, I'm gonna separate this video into 3 different sections. How to beat Rescue Ace, how to beat Mannadium, and of course, how to beat Tearlament. Do not be afraid to use the timestamps to skip through the video to find what you want. The only thing I require from you is your undying loyalty. I think it would be best to start off with the deck that I think is going to be the most represented Yu-Gi-Oh deck and what is currently the best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh in Rescue Ace. I'm in danger! Rescue Ace is a fire-based Yu-Gi-Oh deck that wants to summon really powerful monsters like Rescue Ace Turbulence, and then set Rescue Ace spell and trap cards to be able to dominate your monsters on the field. The deck recently got more support with the Diablo Star Sinful Spoils engine, making it ultra consistent, but also allowing it to synchro summon into monsters like Baron de Fleur and Borreload Savage Dragon, which help you protect those spells and trap cards. Essentially, it's a back row deck that can summon really big, powerful monsters. Now, fortunately, there are some really huge weaknesses that you can use against Rescue Ace when it comes to hand traps. The most powerful cards against this deck are Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, Infinite Impermanence, and Effect Failure. I ain't gonna lie, big dog, you gonna hear those cards throughout the entire video, so hint, hint, you might want to consider playing them. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is pretty good against Rescue Ace, but where should you use it? You actually want to use it onto their spell card Emergency every single time. The reason why you do this on Emergency is because you don't want Rescue Ace players to essentially search any Rescue Ace monster from their deck to their field, and this is their biggest mill ticket. But of course, there are other opportunities you Ash Blossom. The reason why Rescue Ace went from nobodies to the top fire trucks in charge is because of the Diablo Star Sinful Spoils engine. There's gonna be some times where you Ash Blossom their Emergency and then they follow up with these particular cards. It's perfectly fine that you still Ash Blossom the Emergency, but if they start off with these cards, you're gonna use Ash Blossom on these particular cards under the certain circumstance. If your opponent starts off with Diablo Star the Dark Witch and then uses its effect to get to the original Sinful Spoils, you will Ash Blossom the effect of Sinful Spoils 10 times out of 10. The reason why you do this here is because they're giving up a lot of cards just to get into that level 1 monster. You can almost guarantee that it's going to be the Rescue Ace Hydrant, and stopping it before it gets summoned is really big. But if they started off their turn with Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils, the best opportunity to use Ash Blossom of Joyous Spring will be on Rescue Hydrant that they're going to summon with their Sinful Spoils engine. As for cards like Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence, I would 100% save those for Rescue Ace Turbulence every single time. Big dog, if you stop the Rescue Ace Turbulence, you are winning! Some other good cards against the deck is Nibiru the Primal Being, though you would still need a way to stop that Rescue Ace Turbulence. As for how to beat Rescue Ace, a lot of players get focused on the monsters. Keep in mind this deck is really built on being able to use its spell and trap cards. Some of the best cards to use against Rescue Ace are Lightning Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster, and especially evenly matched. But keep in mind, you're going to have to be able to bait the effects of Baron de Fleur potentially before you can use these effects and wipe out their back row. And ironically, Rescue Ace's biggest weakness is decks that don't play a lot of monsters and decks that make untargetable monsters. This is a monster-focused Yu-Gi-Oh deck where some of its most powerful cards A, target, and B, destroy cards. If you play a particular deck that summons untargetable monsters or just plays a ton of spell and trap cards, Rescue Ace can very much struggle against these strategies. The next deck that you 100% need to know how to beat is Mannadium. Mannadium is a synchro combo Yu-Gi-Oh deck that can make some of the most dangerous boards in the entire game. It's a deck that's built around playing with balls. Hey yo! And the new Mannadium Trusukta is definitely high on the sus meter. The best Yu-Gi-Oh hand traps against Mannadium. Droll and Lockbird. Seriously, Droll and Lockbird is the end-all, be-all against this deck. If you can use Droll and Lockbird on a Mannadium strategy, you're normally doing really well. Of course, you want to activate that as soon as possible, but that's not really a counter guide. What about some of those other hand traps? Ironically, the exact same hand traps that were effective against Rescue Ace are pretty effective against Mannadium. Ash Blossom, Imperm, Effect Veiler, and cards of like Nibiru as well. Now, I'm not gonna lie with you, in this particular matchup, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring doesn't trade very well. What I mean by this is that you're gonna be using Ash Blossom to stop cards, but there's still gonna be cards on the field for Mannadium to be able to use for a particular effect. But a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Players play Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring inside of their deck, and these are the best cards to stop when you have this card. Using Ash Blossom when they activate Peaceful Planet Calarium is probably the best utility you're gonna get out of the card. Calarium is the most important out of the three because this card adds the Mannadium monster that they need to their hand to be able to extend with their combos. The next card to Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is Mannadium Reamheart. Again, another card to prevent them from getting a Mannadium monster from their deck to their hand. There are some one-card combos with this particular deck, but a lot of times it requires multiple cards to get the job done, so slowing them down and preventing them from getting multiple Mannadium monsters is a great idea. Scarecrow Lightheart is actually a ridiculously powerful card. I know this little 1000 attack chibi boy don't seem real powerful, but it actually gets you so much advantage. Now, ironically, the same rules apply if you're using cards like Infinite Impermanence and Effect Veiler. Use those cards to be able to stop Reamheart and Lightheart as fast as you can, and pray to God that they don't have the other cards in their hand, because when playing against this deck and using hand traps, a lot of times you're going to need multiple and a little bit of luck. At the worst, it does slow Mannadium players down if you are allowing them to be able to make their board that they want to without hand traps. More often than not, you're not going to win the game. Now, fortunately enough, there are some really good cards that you can use against Mannadium if you're going second. It is a monster-focused deck, so using monsters like Lava Golem or Winged Dragon or Sphere Mode to clear their board is really, really strong. Yeah, you can already see they got that thing on the field, and you be like,
"Great beast of the sky, please hear my cry."
Bonus points if you actually play Winged Dragon Raw. That would be really, really cool to see. But another insane card against Mannadium is Super Polymerization. This allows you to be able to bypass cards like Mannadium Reframing, which they can use to stop cards like Dark Ruler No More and Forbidden Droplet, and a lot of times allows you to get rid of their board or their most important parts while summoning a monster on your own. Also, some other really good cards against Mannadium is Mistaken Arrest or Shared Ride. Both of these cards are really, really good against the deck. Shared Ride for getting you into the cards you need to be able to break Mannadium's board, and Mistaken Arrest as a substitute Droll and Lockbird. Definitely use cards like Dimensional Barrier if you can to prevent them from synchro summoning, and Mannadium's biggest weakness is if you can stop their normal summon. Using a deck that's really good at removing monsters from the field, Mannadium actually really struggles at being able to follow up by summoning other monsters to accomplish this goal. And lastly, one of the most represented decks in the game right now is easily Tearlament. Since Tearlament has been out for so long, Tearlament can be incredibly easy to remember what to stop, and then sometimes you can just brain fart and forget exactly what you're supposed to hit. These hand traps are still Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, Infinite Impermanence, Effect Veiler, and cards alike, but then there's also cards like Dimensional Shifter. For cards like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, I would strictly reserve it for the Ishizu cards like Ajido and Kelbeck, but you can also use them on cards like Tearlament's Rhinoheart and Diviner of Herald, provided that they didn't activate any other cards at the same time. There is a pretty big question on, do you use Ash Blossom on the effects that send cards from the deck to the graveyard, like Tearlament's Scream? It's iffy. If a Tearlament player is really low on resources, using Ash Blossom to stop them from sending cards from the deck to the graveyard is really good, but other times it may be just a dumb idea. You really have to go on a case-by-case basis. So again, unless it's cards that send an insane amount like Kelbeck and Jido, I would probably hold that Ash Blossom for those particular cards. For Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence, 100% hit that Tearlament Rhinoheart and that Diviner of Herald. Those are hands down the best value you're going to be able to get with the cards, and its bonus is because your opponent can't activate cards at the same time to prevent you from using those cards to stop them. As for Dimension Shifter, it is almost a no-brainer immediately. But some other great cards that you could be using against them is DD Crow. This card is really, really good. A lot of times you want to use DD Crow to hit a Tearlament monster in the graveyard. And a really cool situation about this is that if you use your effect to be able to stop a Tearlament monster, a lot of times they'll have to use some of their Ishizu Shuffler cards like Medora or Kelbeck to shuffle those cards back into the deck, still effectively stopping the effect. Nibiru is also, ironically, incredibly good against Tearlament, especially since it's a lot harder for them to summon Tearlament Root Kalos. A lot of them aren't even playing cards like King of the Swamp to be able to fusion summon into the card. So Nibiru, and a lot of times Nibiru plus another hand interruption is really, really good. If you draw Nibiru plus the second hand interruption, you can pretty much use this when they try to go into Beatrice, but you can actually wait as long as you can, because a lot of times they'll only make one card that can even stop Nibiru. If you have just Nibiru, I would use this as soon as they have a level 6 and a level 4 monster, with one of them being a tuner. That prevents them from summoning better on the floor, and a lot of times can throw a wrench into their situation. Now, other great cards against Tearlament, you won't believe what it is. Abyss Dweller. Abyss Dweller is incredibly insane against Tearlament. It almost wins the game outright. It's really, really powerful. Super Polymerization is also another card that is really good against the deck too. Ironically, one card that I wouldn't necessarily recommend against Tearlament is Dimensional Barrier, and it's because Tearlament is actually a way more diverse deck than what players will give it credit. It can easily Synchro Summon, Link Summon, and Exceed Summon very easily, so really avoid that particular card and stick to hand traps like the Bestials, DD Crow, Effect Veiler, Ash Blossom, Infinite Impermanence, and your best friend will always be Abyss Dweller. And that's all that I got for today's meta counter guide. It's been a very long time since I made one of these, so I'd appreciate it if you showed this video some love. Of course, Big Dog, the only thing that I ask from you is your complete loyalty and allegiance. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with a friend so everybody can know how to beat these amazing decks.